everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Jiyae Hwang. I am a senior associate at Scott Legal PC. And today we are going to spend some time discussing the E-1 visa requirements and key considerations when preparing an E-1 visa application. As you may know, the E-1 visa allows entrepreneurs to come to the US to engage in international trade between the United States and their home country. So just a few things before we get started. Scott Legal is a full-service immigration law firm. Our main specialty is E-2 investor visas. We regularly process a high number of them. We do assist individuals pursuing various types of visas, including family-based, employment-based immigrant visas, and a variety of non-immigrant visas, including the E-1 visa for treaty traders. We will be continuing this webinar series, doing at least 2 different webinars a month on a variety of immigration law topics. At the end of this webinar, we will be sending out a few things to all participants. First, we will send you a copy of the PowerPoint that will be used in this webinar. We will also send you a comprehensive guide on the E-1 visa that you can use as a reference. We will also send you a link where you can sign up for additional webinars in the future, and also a link to this webinar as it will be recorded. Finally, this webinar will be available on YouTube, and we do encourage you to subscribe to our channel as we regularly upload a variety of immigration law related videos. And also, last but not least, we will send you a link where you can set up a consultation with one of our lawyers should you desire to speak about your case in more detail. So today, we are very lucky to have Michaela Vrazdova, a senior associate at Scott Legal with a wealth of E-1 visa experience, who has successfully handled a variety of E-1 cases, who will be answering these commonly found questions about the E-1 visa. Finally, for any questions you may have, please do feel free to add them to the chat box or use the Q&A function, and we will try and get to all questions. So without further delay, let us move into our presentation. Let's move on to the first slide.
Thank you so much, Jiyae, and good afternoon, everyone. So yeah, let's discuss the E-1 visa requirements and what the E-1 visa is. So the E-1 visa is a non-immigrant visa that allows you to come to the US. So you by yourself or through a company can engage in substantial international trade between the US and your home country. So the first and probably the most important requirement is that to even qualify for the E-1 visa, you must be a national of an E-1 visa treaty country. So not all countries in the world are E-1 visa treaty countries, but there are many, many countries on the list. So countries such as, for example, Germany, Japan, UK, Italy, Thailand are all on the list, and many, many others. Also, this list is updated on every couple of years, and countries are added. So it's always good to check and keep that in mind. Also, what is important for the nationality requirement is that you are a national of an E-1 visa treaty country, and you don't have to be born in that country. So, for example, let's say that you were born in China or India, which are not E-1 visa treaty countries, but then later in your life you got citizenship of, for example, UK or Canada, you would still be able to apply for the E-1 visa. So the next requirement is that to qualify for an E-1 visa, there must be a trade between your home country and between the US. So for the trade to qualify under the E-1 visa requirements, there must be an actual exchange of either goods or services between your home country and the US. The exchange must be traceable and identifiable, and the trade must be already existing at the time you apply for the E-1 visa. So, let's say that you have an idea for a business, and you kind of like want to come to the US and kind of examine the market, and then like later you would start, trading between the US and your home country. That would not work for the E-1 visa, because for the E-1 visa, the trade must be already existing at the time you are applying for the E-1 visa. So the next requirement is that the trade must be substantial, and we'll go over this in more detail on one of the next slides. Then the trade must be international. So this means that at least, so let's say that you have a company abroad, and that company is trading with the United States, but it's also trading with, for example, I don't know, UK, China, Australia, and many, many other countries. To qualify for the E-1, you have to show that at least 50% of all the international trade is between your country and the US. Then the next requirement is that you must be coming to the US to engage in the substantial international trade, and then you have intent to return to your home country once your E-1 visa expires. So this basically means that your intent when you are applying for the E-1 visa is not to kind of immigrate to the US and live here indefinitely. You must have that intent to return to your home country. But I will say that kind of like the intent requirement is, pretty relaxed for the E-1 visa applicants. You can sell your house, you can sell your house, all your belongings in your home country, and still, qualify for the E-1 visa. The standard is not high, as high as it is, for example, for a B2 tourist visa. What is really required for this is that you submit a signed declaration to the consulate in which you basically attest that, yes, once your visa expires, you plan to come back to your home country, but also this doesn't prevent you to renew the E-1 visa after it expires. Perfect. So let's move on. So what is trade, and what can what can be some of the items you or your company can trade? So basically any item that is commonly traded in international commerce can qualify. So obviously goods, like fabrics, I don't know, jewelry, materials, furniture, all of that could qualify. Also services could qualify. So, let's say that, for example, you have a company in your home country and that company is providing consulting services primarily to US clients, that could qualify as well. So any kind of services such as consulting services, tax services, marketing services, or any services, could if you have business like that, you could still qualify for the E-1 visa. Now, how can you prove that there is this ongoing trade between your home country and the United States? So I would say here it's important to always check the website and kind of like the requirements of the specific consulate where you will be applying, just because different consulates want to see kind of different evidence of this. But generally, what we submit is a trade spreadsheet for at least 2 or 3 most recent years. So this spreadsheet would basically kind of like list your clients, their nationality, kind of like the value of the ongoing transactions, and you would then submit this to the consulate. Also, another type of evidence could be invoices you issue to your clients, or bills of lading if you are importing goods to the United States. bank statements of your company, like showing incoming payments from your clients, and then or the company's tax returns, again, kind of showing that yes, you have revenue from clients. But again, I would recommend to check kind of like the specific requirements of the consulate where you want to apply, to see what exactly they want to see. Perfect. So now, how much trade is enough, or, like what is the substantial trade requirement? So there is not really kind of like a clear answer for this. There is nothing in the regulations that says, if the trade per calendar year is over, I don't know, $150,000, the case is going to be approved. Instead, the standard is that the E-1 company must engage in a continuous flow of trade between the US and your home country. So what the officers wants to see is that there are numerous trade exchanges between the United States and your home country over time. Generally, we recommend that the trade has been ongoing for at least 6 months before you apply for the E-1 visa. I would say, in some cases, it may be a little bit less, but then you would kind of like, we would have to show that, you have a lot of clients, you have like additional signed contracts with clients and things like that. So I would say the 6 months is kind of generally the minimum period of time we would want to see. And then we would also want to see generally that the trade amount is at least around 200 or 250,000 per year between your home country and the United States. And the consulates, they will focus on different things when kind of reviewing the trade spreadsheet and the supporting documents. So they will look at, like how many clients do you have? So, like let's say that you only have 1 or 2 clients in the United States, and they each pay you, I don't know, like $1 million per year for all these different, goods or services you sell them. Even though the monetary value is really high, the number of client would be, would be too low because they want to see this, as I said, the continuous flow of transactions. And if you only have 1 or 2 clients, that would not be enough. So I would say like the minimum we would generally want to see is around I don't know, 8 to 10, and generally the more the better. They will also look at the monetary value of the transactions, and they will also look at how many transactions you had with each client in the past couple of years. So, if you only, if there is 1 invoice to each of the, 10 clients and in the past year, that would, again, probably not be sufficient. There have to be kind of like multiple transactions per year for the trade to qualify as substantial. So I would say generally, the more clients, the more transactions, and the kind of like the higher the transactions are in value, the more helpful it will be for your case. Now, we often, because there are many companies in the US on the E-1 visa, and they are, like large companies with revenue of, multiple millions of dollars per year. But we often get a question from our clients, if they're kind of a company that is a smaller company can qualify for the E-1 visa. And so the answer is yes. Even small businesses, small companies can qualify, and it's kind of explicitly said in the regulations that even small businesses can qualify. But even, so in that case, obviously the monetary value of the transactions would probably be lower, but you would still want to see that you have many clients, and with each client, there are kind of like many ongoing transactions, and many you had many transactions with them in the past. And so one other thing to keep in mind is that you have to show that the trade is substantial at the time you are applying for the E-1 visa, but the trade also has to remain substantial once the E-1 visa is granted, for you to be then able to renew the visa. Perfect. So let's discuss some other trade considerations. So we already touched on this a little bit. So must the trade be already existing at the time you are applying for an E-1 visa? So generally, yes. As I said, we would recommend that it's generally the trade is ongoing for at least 6 months before you apply. Now, there are certain scenarios, like let's say that, you just started the trade, it has been going on only for 1 month, but you can show binding contracts, kind of like with additional clients that will start in the next couple, 3 to 5 months. And the contracts are for kind of like high monetary value. So I would say in that case, yes, like you could apply if you have those binding contracts to point to. But generally, we do recommend that the trade has been ongoing for some period of time. Now, how much of the trade must be between the US and your home country? So the requirement here, as I mentioned, is that at least 50% of the international trade must be between the US and your home country. So let's go over this example. So a company in Spain manufactures glass and exports it to other countries, and also exports it within Spain. And sales within Spain are $100,000. Sales to the US are $500,000, and sales to China are $500,000. So the domestic trade in the calculating, like how much of the trade is with the US. So we would completely ignore the domestic trade. So that's not relevant for the E-1 visa. So we would only look at the trade, with the US and China. And here, you would meet the requirement because at least 50% of the trade is with the US. So that's like one important thing to keep in mind, is that you only look at the international trade when, like trying to figure out like how much, if you meet this requirement. Perfect. So, how can you apply for the E-1? So you can either apply at a consulate, or you can apply with USCIS. So I would say that, the vast majority of people apply at a consulate just because when you apply at a consulate, the consulate issues you an E-1 visa, which is a visa stamp in your passport that allows you to come to the US and leave. And as long as the visa is valid, you are kind of able to travel back and forth. And most people just want to have that flexibility to be able to travel internationally. Now, there is an option to apply for a change of status with USCIS. So, but you must be in the United States already to be able to do this. So, like let's say that you were here on a B1 visitor visa, and then you decide you want to change status to E1. So it is possible. But if the petition is approved, it will only give you E-1 status in the US for a period of 2 years. So you will be the 2 years, you'll be able to stay in the United States. But the minute you leave, you would have to go to the consulate and apply for the visa there anyway. So that's why kind of like most people prefer to apply at consulates just because the visa gives them the flexibility to travel. So, especially I would say like during COVID, we saw many more cases or many more people doing the change of status petitions, just because the international travel was kind of limited anyway. So we did process many more than usually. And also the timelines at the consulates were very backlogged, and people were waiting for an appointment sometimes like over a year. But I would say like generally the timelines are currently much better. It depends which consulate you are applying. Some consulates are almost completely back to the wait times they had pre-COVID. Some consulates are still a little bit slower, but it's not that extreme like you would be waiting for an appointment for like a year anymore. Perfect. So let's go over some recent visa developments and adjudication trends. So let's say that you have an E-1 visa already, and you haven't been living in the United States for some period of time, or like you haven't really been living here. Is that a problem? So the answer is no. So even if the E-1 visa is granted to you, there is no requirement that you kind of like move to the United States and live here full time, or like more than half a year. So if you do get the E-1 visa, I would say that majority of people kind of like move here and just kind of like primarily live in the United States. But some people also just kind of like visit, like every couple of weeks or every couple of months, and that's completely fine. So there is no residency requirement for the E-1 visa. And kind of like the second issue, or kind of like we have been seeing and clients have been asking about is, let's say that someone wants to renew visa this year in 2023. They will need to submit the trade spreadsheets, showing the trade numbers and the tax returns for, I would say at least the past 3 years. So, sometimes people are concerned, that the trade numbers went down during COVID, and they're concerned how that will impact their renewal application. So, here I would say that, if in 2020, 2021, the numbers went down, but, the trade like didn't completely stop, like you still had, like some clients, the trade was still kind of ongoing. It just kind of decreased, but then at some point it picked up again. It shouldn't be an issue for the renewal. All people are on the same boat for, both the E-1, E-2 visa, and, I would say majority or, really all businesses were affected by COVID. So as long as at some point the business picked up again, and, we are kind of like able to point to that, just because the trade decreased for some period of time, it shouldn't be an issue for the renewal. Perfect. So now, let's discuss business plans, employees, and business entities for E-1 visa. So, do you need a business plan for an E-1 visa? So business plans are generally required if you are applying for an E-2 investor visa, if you are starting a new business. But for an E-1 visa, business plans are generally not required. Now, I said generally just because, at some situations, it may be helpful to submit a business plan with your application. So, let's say that your business or the company is new and has only been trading for, 5-6 months, and the numbers are still kind of like on the lower side, the business is still kind of only picking up. In that case, it may be beneficial to submit a business plan in which you would explain, like how the company will find more clients, like what are your revenue projections for the next 5 years, and just kind of explain to the consulate that, like, yes, even like now, the numbers are kind of on the lower side, but you do have plan and you do have strategy on, like how you plan to get more clients, and explain how the revenue will increase. Now, regarding employees, so there is no requirement that you have US employees for an E-1 visa. It's always, beneficial if you are submitting the application, and if you do have employees in the US, I would definitely mention it in the application, because it's, it's always kind of helpful if the business employs US workers. But if you don't, it's not an issue, just because it's not required for an E-1 visa like it is for an E-2 visa. And then, do you have to have a business entity when applying for an E-1 visa? So having a business entity is not required for an E-1 visa, but I will say that from our experience, most of the people decide to set up an entity before coming to the US, just because it's generally good for them for kind of tax and liability reasons to have the entity set up, but it's not required. Perfect. So what are some common reasons for E-1 denials? So I would say the first reason is that the trade amount is just too low. So, let's say that you applied for an E-1 visa, and the trade in the past 3 years was always only around like $50,000-$60,000 per year. So that's just too low for the E-1. So that's the first common reason for a denial. The second is that you only have a few clients. If you only have like 2, 3, 4 clients, again, even though they pay you a lot of money, that's just not going to be sufficient for the E-1. Just because one of the requirements, as we discussed, is that the trade must be substantial. And one of the things the consulate looks at is the number of clients you have. The next reason is that there is just not enough transactions ongoing with each of the clients. So, like, let's say that you have 10 clients, but you only issued like 1 or 2 or 3 invoices, or kind of like very low number of invoices to each of them per year. That's just, again, too low, because the consulate wants to see that kind of like continuous flow of transactions. And then the next common reason for denial is that less than 50% of international trade is between the US and the treaty countries. So, if you trade with many different countries, it's important to kind of like look at the numbers and, to kind of like determine before applying whether, you meet this requirement. And the last common reason for denial is that the trade is not existing at the time of the visa application, and you don't have, any, as we mentioned, you don't have any binding contracts you can point to with future clients. So if the trade is not existing yet, then the E-1 visa is just not the right visa. The better option may be to enter as a B1 business visitor, kind of explore the US market, and then come back to your home country, start the trade, and once the trade is ongoing, then apply for the E-1 visa. Perfect. So now let's discuss, like how and when you should renew your E-1 visa. So the kind of like the period of time for which the E-1 visa will be granted depends on your country of nationality. So nationals of some country can get the E-1 visa for 5 years, which is great because then you can you only have to renew it every 5 years. But then nationals of other countries, may only get the E-1 visa for 1 year or only for a couple of months. So, that's kind of, and this is called reciprocity schedule or reciprocity period. So, it's important to check. So basically, before a couple months before your E-1 visa expires, you would want to submit a renewal application at a consulate or with the USCIS if you originally changed status. So in the renewal application, you will have to show that you kind of still meet all the requirements we went through. So you will have to show that the trade is substantial, and you will be submitting evidence such as the company's tax returns for the past I would say at least 3 years. Some consulates want to see like the whole 5 years, since if your visa was granted for 5 years, they want to see tax returns for all 5 years. Then you would want to submit the trade spreadsheets, again, kind of, listing the clients, the amount of transactions, and all of that for the past couple of years. And then you would want to submit some excerpt of invoices you issued to the clients in the past couple of years. Again, here it will be important to kind of check the consulate's website to see like what they want to see for the renewal application. And also most consulates have page limits for the E-1 visa application. So if the page limit is like 70 or 100 pages, then you would really be only submitting like excerpts of the tax returns, excerpts of, like you would focus on some high amount kind of dollar invoices you issue to clients. Like you wouldn't be submitting, like all invoices you kind of issued in the past 3 or 5 years. So again, it will be important to kind of check what needs to be submitted. And again, you would have to show that over 50% of the international trade has been between the United States and your home country. And this would be basically kind of like outlined in the spreadsheet. You would submit the renewal application at a consulate, have another interview, and then if the consulate concludes that you still meet all the E-1 visa requirements, they would then renew the visa. Perfect. So do we have any questions?
Okay. Thank you so much, Michaela, for your insights. I don't believe we have any questions that came in at this point. So if there's no more questions from the audience, we can close here. Michaela, thank you so much for providing those insights. That was very informative, and I'm sure it was helpful to our audience. Okay, then we can close here. Have a great day, everyone, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you.